much later into the session, they can rewatch to see what they've missed. And as usual, those who are not able to join us live, they will have the recording to fall back on. So we have a special guest today. In fact, it's so special that we have to let him do a special kind of a title. So for those who already know him, you won't be surprised by the title of today's session. But for those of us who do not know him, you're going to be in for a nice treat. So as you can see from the title, it's Python for Business Intelligence. And our special guest today, let me just try to read us his profile. So those of us who are maybe encountering him today, you will have some kind of a glimpse into the special background he has. And let me just... So our guest today is Kelechi Emenike. I hope I pronounced it very well, the last name, but the first name, I know I did that well. So he is someone who is very passionate, not just about technology and Python, which is why we brought him here, but also about God. He is a data strategist, a business technology advisor for various organizations, and he's done stuff for startups, for SMEs, for global firms. He's got a lot of experience doing things for FMCG, financial services companies, and a lot in oil and gas. He's a Python evangelist. I'm part of the community that he's the founder of, so I am a product of some of his community activities. He's a full stack developer. There's so much to him because of his vast interest, and also he's the kind of person who doesn't like to just say, you know what, I'm a one-sided person, I will just learn this and focus on only that. He cuts across his interests, cuts across even Excel, Power BI, and that's why he's just the perfect person to help us see how we can merge our learning, in using Power BI with also our need. Because to be sincere, as much as we are saying Power BI is what is bringing us together, there is Python. That's going to be like the future. If you say what is next, definitely going to be involving Python if you are serious about your data analytics career journey. And so that is why we have brought him today to enlighten us, to open our eyes to how we can go from where we are to incorporating that what is next. So, Mr. Casey, are you ready for us? Should I hand over at this juncture to you? So you can see his screen is coming up. So thank you.
I think, yeah.
Perfect. So thank you.
All right. Hi, guys. Hello, everybody. I'm sure that we have been having a good time. The Power BI office hour has been an insightful journey for a lot of us. So for the next few minutes, we'll try and see how we can together go through some of this stuff that should help us in our business as data analysts, as business intelligence analysts, whichever niche that we are in, managers or operational or strategy. Before we start, though, I'm going to share. Before we start, just a bit of a tease, right? I and my wife, we had a small discussion. So can you see my screen? I see this landing page, and
yes.
Then you can see this landing page, right? Now the question I asked, let me just get some votes, right? Can we go to that link and help me choose between these two landing pages? Which one do you think you would use if you were to choose a landing page? So I'm hoping you can see the link I'm sharing, the screen I'm sharing, menti.com, type that code, and then please help me. Let me see if I can settle an argument in my house.
But we need to settle it in favor of your wife, because
well, yeah, you guys are about to find out. You guys are about to find out which one of them is.
So problem. You better tell us which one she chose, so that if you win, or if she wins, you win.
Oh, I need us. I need us to let's first get unbiased feedback. Then we'll tell you that she picks. When we are done, I'll tell you which of them she picked, and then we can now settle for that one as
I've voted.
the one of sorts. Yeah. So let me let's go just verify you can probably show of hands. Let me go to the app so that we can just 1 second. It's about to show. Just wait. So I'm trying to get it open on mine. So please let's keep voting. I'm interested in your feedback. It's probably going to help me with getting presentation done. And I'm sure for some of us that have done that are used to this business of business analytics or business intelligence, you know that at the end of all your work, you need to present your data. Am I right? So if you have to present your data, that means some of these little tiny, seemingly unimportant things become important. Allow me to share my screen so that we can together look at. So let's see what we have voted so far. Oh, look like equal. Some people say the one on the left, some people say the one on the right. Okay, someone has gone right, like someone has tilted to the right. So it looks like B is currently winning. All right, that is good. That is very good, because I dare to say, let me go back to my screen. So, so I'll just tell you for free that between these two, when I asked her to pick the left or the right, one of guess the one she picked the one on the right. So I have an excellent presentation specialist, just like you guys. So thank you very much for thank you. Okay, so the of course, a bit about me before we go on. Kelechi Emenike is my name. KC Emenike. First thing I like to say about myself is that there are three things I'm passionate about: God, technology, and Python. I've spent some years advising businesses on, I like to use the word, how to leverage technology for business productivity. Couple of areas of expertise. I've worked with fast-moving consumer goods. I've worked with financial services, energy, oil, gas. I like to see myself as a Python evangelist. I don't like to say I'm a full-stack developer, even though I've had some hands-on experience with full-stack development. Okay, but if you notice, I drew a line across it. Because yeah, it's one of those things that we just do because we like to have fun. A couple of certifications with cloud, multi-cloud, AWS and all, and Azure. I think and GCP as well. So, well, I trained in Python, Excel, and SQL. And that's like to say I'm a natural problem maker. For those that know me up close and personal, I'm sure that last line is very valid. Of course, if troublemaking means thinking out of the box, you'll find me where there's trouble. So enough of my introduction and so on and so forth. You probably see a skill cloud at the background. That's a bit of what I do as well. Now, down to the business of the day. I hope I'm still on track with time. Yes, I think what is business intelligence and why do I need it? What exactly is business intelligence and why do I need it? I like to use, if you look at the image I have, you see that I have a light bulb that stands out, right? I'll explain what that means in a few minutes. The first question I'd like to ask to explain that would be how exactly is data? Now let's take a break for a moment and ask ourselves. I'm sure we are data people. If you use Power BI, you already use data in your day-to-day, right? So maybe explain what data is useful for may not be very interesting for guys like you, the professionals already. I still like to use this image. I'm sure we've seen this on Instagram and so on and so forth on social media. We see data as raw data as the dots that are scattered everywhere, and the information allow me to use the word categorize the data, right? And on the next, we get to the point of knowledge, where we can now link or connect the dots. I think that's the word I like to use. Connect the dots, right? At the next level after knowledge, we get to the point of insight, where we begin to realize or understand the key things that are important in our data. So that's where you see things like KPIs, that's key performance indicators. You see things like OKRs. You see things like that's where the charting comes in. That's where graphs come in, and that kind of stuff, right? That's the insight part of data. Of course, this is probably where I like to say that business intelligence now needs to extend to what I call data strategy, right? So at the point after business intelligence, as part of business intelligence, we now come to where business decision needs to be made, where management now needs to sit down, look at the business insight that has been proposed, compare it with the prevailing business events, right? Like what's happening out there in the industry compared to the industry, and then there they are now able to make business decisions, right? And then the last thing that really at the head of business decision is what I call impact, right? Where you now pick the most important decisions that greatly impact your business, right? There are many roads to the market, but which one will make the most impact? So at the base of all of this is data. So that's why all of us, whether we like it or not, whether we are data scientists or BI analysts or data engineers, cloud engineers, visualization specialists, whatever part of the ecosystem we are in, everyone starts with data eventually, whether in its raw form or in its processed state, right? Okay, so I think I like to say that, I don't know if this is allowed, but if you can throw in your questions as soon as they come to you, it will also help, right? Let me also inform us while we are at this, that this session is not here to train you on how to use Python, or how to some of the nitty-gritties of how Python works, or object-oriented programming and all those kinds of stuff. No, I'm hoping that's not why you came here, because you cannot do that in 1 hour. It's not possible for you to do that in 1 hour, right? The aim of this session is to tell us where Python is useful in the ecosystem, of data and of business intelligence. That's what we're doing for the next few minutes. Okay, so next, I like to talk about how do I go from data to impact, right? If you look back at this small step by step, where we go from data to information, from knowledge, all the way down to impact, how do we transit from data, raw data, to impact? How do we begin to shine our eyes into those key things that are necessary? So this is where we now start talking about the data ecosystem, which is what I'm going to quickly throw into this slide to see where some of the tools that we may need to have an idea about. If we look at this BI ecosystem, you can see that there are so many. I don't know. It's probably not everything that you able to put together. I see PySpark. I see TensorFlow. I'm looking at the data sources side. I'm seeing Zendesk. So when it comes to data sources, you can pick data from anywhere. So if you look at the data to impact part, data can come from a variety of sources. It can come from your social media accounts. It can come from your database. It can come from your log files in the enterprise. It can come from virtually anywhere. Data will come from SharePoint. Data will come from Yammer. Data will come from your web pages. Data will come from clicks on your website. So anything, every activity that is recorded is useful data, right? And of course, when it comes to data sources, we now start to think about how data is stored and so on and so forth, how data is ingested. Then we now go into extraction, transformation, and loading. This is where most of the work is done. I like to say 70% of the time is spent in extraction, transformation, and loading. In the next few minutes, we'll probably look at what those mean and how Python plays in that space, right? Then we now come into storage, where integration, storage starts first. You have to store some of this data in multiple databases, MySQL, GCP, Azure, and some of these Amazon Redshift, all of these database, all of these storage tools, I apologize, that's the word. All of these storage tools that can accommodate various kinds of data that we have ingested. Another thing is how we're going to do the processing of that data, how we are going to do the data cleaning, right? In all of these spaces. That's the data warehousing part, right? Then once we are able to set up our data in a way that is useful for analytics, then we now start looking at the analytics and business intelligence parts. I'm sure for those of us that are BI professionals, this is the part that we begin to shine, right? In the analytics space, in the BI space. One thing I also like to tell my folks is analytics and BI is not just the section of the data ecosystem. There are a lot of others. And you find out that in the last few years, data engineers have become very, very important. Why? Because the data is rapidly increasing in size. There are a lot of terabytes and terabytes of data is being created every day. And because of that, data engineers now become more and more important. Cloud engineers become more and more important because those are the guys that will be processing, ingesting, extracting, transforming, loading, and doing all of these pre-analytics, right? So here we have allow me to use this as a rough sketch of some of the tools. This is not everything, of course. There are tons and tons of tools that play in this space. So as looking at the BI ecosystem, the data ecosystem. Now the question is, so why exactly am I interested in using Python for this business? Why am I using Python for? So why can't I pick up any tool? Why can't I say, oh, I've been doing Excel all my life, right? And I think Excel can solve my problem. Yes, it will. But there's an article I have on, let me see if I can share that. I'll be sending that a link. There's an article that I have on Medium. I think a couple of us will probably know it. Just a moment. Medium on why should Python. Just research while you wait. I'll need to send us the link on Teams. Just hold on. Trying to share the link with us in a moment. I apologize if this takes a while. Aha. So it's an article on towards data science. This has been, I think this was the early part of the year. Was it last year? Let me send this to the chat. Okay, I should probably just share my screen, yeah? Let me share this particular screen. Okay, so this is me. I wrote a few things about, of course, this is mostly for Excel, where you, yeah, I would say that this post generated a lot of controversy, especially for those of us that are very, very interested in the Excel space, right? But I always also like us to look at the business needs and then the realities that are present. So if you look at things like size, memory, integration, automation, and the cross-platform capabilities, open source community, and so on and so forth, right? I also like to summarize and say, please don't ditch Excel, don't ditch your BI tools that you've been using, don't ditch Tableau, don't ditch Power BI. All you have to do is that if you need a tool for the right solution, go ahead and use it, right? Okay, so you can just go ahead, go check out that link, and have fun. I like to say that please have just a moment. Okay, so I was saying why Python, the very most, let me use the word, the selling point of Python has been simplicity. Python is so simple. There's a meme I would have probably shared where we say that in other programming languages, yes, Python is a programming language. Let us not rule that out. For those of us that hate programming, this is the part that you really hate to look at Python because it is a programming language, right? But okay, the programming language is so simple that English, if you understand English, you can easily translate your English language into code with very minimal tweaks, right? So I like to use the example of Java. If you want to print, you have to do system.out.println before you type your print, right? If you want to print in Python, you just have to do print, then you print what you want to print. So it's as simple as what I've just explained, right? You want to do anything in Python, it's as simple as taking your English pseudocode. If you know how to write pseudocode, pseudocode is the translation of your English into words. Allow me to put it that way. Technically called abstraction. Once you're able to do that, then writing whatever you want to do in Python is easy. Another thing about the simplicity of Python would be in something called Jupyter Notebooks. Let me remove the word Jupyter. It's called notebooks. Your notebook is as simple as, you can see my face, your notebook, right? So I can technically write code on a notebook. Many people in programming, what they will expect you to do is that you take Notepad, your normal Notepad, write your code, compile it into a particular file, then run it in a compiler or an interpreter with Python. Now, on your web browser, you can have what is called a notebook on your web browser. And allow me to just show that for a moment. Just trying to quickly show us. I want to just pick a CD. So let me do Jupyter. I need to switch my screen again. That will work. I'm sure this is new. This is not new to some of us, thankfully, which is a great thing. And if it is, let me see. Okay. Okay, so if you can see my screen, I have I password protected my notes. Like I said, I didn't come here to teach us how to use Python. Just to show us the possibilities of Python and business intelligence. Okay, so I'm going. So this is you technically trying to write your code on. This is me writing my code. I don't know if this screen is big enough. Let me zoom it. On my usual web browser. Remember, this is the last place we were, and I had my other. So this is called a. Now this, what this can help me do sweetly, if I want to print something, is a pop hello world, right? Simple Python code. And this explains to us the simplicity. The moment I run something and execute it, it shows up in my next in the next cell or in the output cell. Now, the beauty about this is that I can take this notebook and somewhere, I'll show us where we can do that, somewhere along the business intelligence works ecosystem, some of these OEMs have allowed it so that I can write a full work notebook and upload it, and then all of those things that I ask for the notebook to do. So I can, let me give an example. Import data. That can be a particular block of code. What's the next thing? Maybe extract. The next thing I want to do is probably transform. Let me just use the next I want to do is probably integrate with other databases. Allow me to just put it that way. So I can write, let's assume that these things are lines of code or these things are chunks of code. I can send this, my notebook, into a system that will process everything for me. I'll explain some of these things in detail in the next few slides. I hope time is not against me yet. But that's the simplicity of what you can use Python to do. Everything is happening on just a few notebooks, right? Interestingly, it can just be one notebook if you really want to do that. That's the simplicity of Python. Now, the next thing I like to talk about is scalability. Python is scalable compared to some of these other data analytics tools that we have. Let me put Excel as an example. Excel has a limit of 1 million rows. Allow me to just put it that way. Then thanks to the Power tools, we can now extend some of these capabilities. But now with Power BI, with the Power tools, we can even extend and begin to connect to SQL databases. You know, it gives us crazy scalability. But now the point where some of these things begin to give us trouble will now be where, okay, if our computer now does not have the capacity to handle some of these memory intensive operations, right? Some queries, for example, can begin to eat up into our RAM or into the processing power that our computers have. Python has capacity for multi-threaded processing. Python has capacity for distributed processing, where you can now begin to use multiple computers, right? There are tools that allow you to do that right there on Python. So just imagine you learn Python and then you are exposed to this level of power because of the scalability capacity of Python. And the third thing I like to talk about is support. Python has excellent support. I don't think any programming language out there has the kind of community support like Python does. You ask any question on Google, on Stack Overflow, you see that you can get virtually answers anywhere. And it's as simple as typing your answer or your question on Google. So if I just type whatever you want to type in Python, you can go ahead and type, ask a question. There's virtually no question that you ask on Stack Overflow that you will not get an answer to. As simple as that, right? So if you are stuck on anything, if you are stuck anywhere, you can just go ahead and ask a question. And you will get an answer, that's for sure. Right? So those are, of course, among a lot of other things that you get to learn you get to understand that Python can, I'll say that these are like the most, let me say, the biggest selling points in Python. Okay, so I'm going to go back to this screen and say, okay, let's not forget what the probably say the data ecosystem, but let's leave it as business intelligence ecosystem. What it looks like, and then how does Python play in these spaces. Look at this screen again, you see that a couple of things are common here. No matter the data source that you are, you need to first ingest that data. When you ingest the data, so ingesting is technically connecting to a data source, then you can extract the data of interest. So you have a database that you might want to use to store the results of your ingestion or your extraction, or you can perform transformation. Transformation can be like data cleaning, some other forms of transformation are also available. And there's the load. Load could mean, okay, I have multiple databases. I have a database in SQL, I have another database in Microsoft SQL, I have another database in Oracle, I have another database on the cloud in Azure, and so on and so forth. I want to integrate these guys together and put them together in some form of data warehouse that I can now perform my analytics on. And once I'm done with that, I can now visualize this data. So Python plays in all of these spheres. That means wherever you are in each step of the ecosystem, with Python knowledge, you can play in any of these spheres, right? Let's look at ingestion, for example. Ingestion with Python, you can connect to virtually any data source. And what you need to do that is what I call libraries. I'm going to be mentioning libraries a lot in the next few minutes. So libraries are tools that allow you to, with Python, extend the capabilities of what you are trying to do. Now, before we get to all of this, I'm going to first start by quickly throwing it out to us. When you want to start using Python, you need to first have Python, typical, right? Nobody can use Excel unless he starts using Excel. That's a good example. So you first go install Python. Of course, Python is available on python.org. Let me just share that with us, python.org. Let me share the screen too. Please allow me to be switching my share from one screen to the other. Hope that works. So to python.org is granting you, if you look at the screen I have here, it's technically when you install Python, you have a command line kind of screen for you to do your, of course you can come here and install it. I would say this is not where you want to actually come and do your installation of Python, because this will just grant you only Python. Remember when I was mentioning ingestion, I mentioned something called libraries. Are those things that allow you to extend the capabilities of Python. Python is a bare bones language. I hate to give you, I hate to burst your bubble or to give you bad news. Python is a bare bones language. It comes batteries included with just some functions, right? Basic stuff. If you want to really get real power out of Python, you may need to now get some of those libraries. So let's say you want to be a web developer. I can write web applications with Python. Some of the tools that you are using, if you know Udemy, for example, Udemy was built on Python. Instagram, some portions of Instagram was built on Python. Some of the Facebook ecosystem was built on Python. There are so many tools out there that are built on Python. Pinterest, and a couple of all of these websites. So if you're interested in doing web development, I'm sure that's not the goal of what we are doing today. Today we are focusing on business intelligence, but I digress, right? If you want to do software development, for example, core software development, you can pick Python. There are tools that can allow you to build applications on Python, right? If you want to do hardcore data science, say you have a PhD in mathematics, and you want to implement some of the algorithms like naive Bayes algorithm, I'm sure some people are probably going to guess lots of what I'm saying, but if you understand, you probably understand where I'm going to. You can also pick up Python and begin to implement some of these mathematical algorithms that you may have put together in to process or to do machine learning or artificial intelligence, right? Python will allow you play in that space as well. And now if you want to do business intelligence in this, you can also pick Python. I'm going to put us through some of those ingestion, extraction load that Python would help you do as well, right? But for you to be able to use Python, which is technically the framework, and use all of these libraries, you would need those libraries, right? And I like to recommend the first place to start is to go and install what my favorite, I call her Anaconda. Anaconda is the tool. Let me go there. I think this should be it. Anaconda will give you all of the tools if you are interested in data, business intelligence, data analytics, data science, machine learning, artificial intelligence. Anaconda is the integrated development environment that you need to have. So once you download Anaconda, it grants you access to some of the tools that I've explaining with data ingestion, data extraction, data processing, data transformation, data visualization, and so on and so forth. Right? So that is what you need to have. So I'll say if you want to start, go out there, download Anaconda, watch a few videos on how it works, and you should well be on your way to begin. So once you have Anaconda, you technically have all the libraries. That means most of the tools I'll be explaining in the next few minutes would actually really come with Anaconda. So if you have any questions or say, okay, how do I use this? Just go install Anaconda. Right. So back to ingest. I was saying ingest allows you to extract, so to get data or to connect to various data sources. So with libraries on Python, in Python, you can connect to online. So you can connect to share. There's a project that's been on, I think I was on not too long ago, where I had needed to connect to Office 365 directly from Python. You can also connect to your Google apps. If you use Google apps, you can connect to Salesforce if you are a CRM person, right? You can connect to Slack, connect to virtually anywhere that data can be stored, right? Python can ingest data from sources. So this most likely be for data engineers. Data engineers are the first guys that are going to meet in the data ecosystem or in the BI ecosystem. Their job is to make sure that data is extracted, optimized, and performant manner. Of course, next would be extraction, right? Extraction will be where you can convert most of those data that you have. Sometimes when you are getting data using the ingest method, you're probably getting data from audio, you're getting data from video, you're getting data from images, and so on and so forth. Now, when extraction comes in, before analytics can happen in the front, you need to be able to at least get those data into a format that it will be analyzable. So that's where text analysis comes in. That's where you need to be able to do a conversion from audio to text. If you've heard of transcription, right, it's part of this aspect of the data ecosystem. And like I was saying, there are Python tools that allow you to do this extraction. Let me give an example of web scraping. Web scraping uses something called Beautiful Soup, right? Among others, there are tools like Scrapy that allows you to also scrape data from a web page. I'm going to just send up in the chat. There are a lot of them. I'm sure if I continue, I can go on and on. There's Beautiful Soup, there's Scrapy, there's Selenium if you want to use it for data web scraping. There's a lot of them, and really, I would say it's not. You don't have to know everything. You just pick the one that you're interested in, right, and then go ahead and do it and use it. And like I said, there are tools out there. That's what I like to explain from the position of support. There are tools out there that can act, there are support, or there's a community out there that can help you to learn most of this stuff if you want to get information. And of course, also as part of extraction, there is something I also chipped in here called regular expressions. Regular expressions allow you to selectively extract text based on specific criteria. So let's say I have a text. Allow me to share my screen, just in normal, hoping that you guys can still see my screen. So if, for example, I come just to this normal screen, I want to extract let's like technically find and replace this time. Find. You can extract all of everything that is called data. In this screen, I have it appearing 13 times, right? So I can do an extraction, and I only extract the occurrences of data using something called regular expressions. Regular expressions allow us to specify how do I put that together now? To specify a pattern, right, as to how the portions of data I want. I can say I want to extract everything that ends in a full stop. So that means I can extract only the texts that end with full stop. I'll extract this sentence, but I will skip, okay, this has a full stop, but I will skip all of these other sentences if they don't have a full stop, right? I'll skip open source, I will extract this one, and so on and so forth. So we can specify based on pattern matching. And I like to share with most of my colleagues that when it comes to data, one of the most important eye you need to have is an eye for patterns. And if you are in the data engineering side of the data ecosystem, regular expressions will be critical in knowledge, right? So there we have it on. So where are we right now? We talked about ingestion, we talked about extraction. We're going to go into transformation, basic stuff with transformation. This is probably something you are used to. If you have used Power BI a lot, you understand summarize, understand filter, aggregate, index. So I probably won't spend a lot of time going through all of this. Next would be load. Of course, this load really talks to integration. So if you have multiple databases and you want to load, so you have extracted data from database A, you've the connector, for example, to database A is in MySQL, you've done another connector to your what's the word now? To Oracle. Oh, sorry, I went forward. You've done another one to various databases, and then you want to be able to integrate this data such that you can normalize. Hope you can still hear me. Let me show you can still hear me. Just a moment. Can everyone still hear me? Okay, I think you can. Yes. Okay, good. So can you still see my screen, or have I gone offline? Okay, I think I have gone off.
Yeah, we can see your screen.
Yeah, we can see your screen.
Yes. No.
Okay.
Yes.
Okay. So when you get to the point where you need to connect some of this stuff, remember we'll need, at this point we are talking about having a data warehouse. We're talking about, so this is beyond the portion of databases. We now have a data warehouse where multiple databases from different sources and different architectures can now integrate into a great data warehouse. And that's where, for those of us that are used to the enterprise workspace, we talk about things like SQL Server, right? We talk about things like Azure Databricks, and so on and so forth. So this point, we now have multiple databases integrated and then start doing things like normalization to make sure the data from different sources are, allow me to use the word, looking alike, right? And next would be the analysis part. Some of us are also used to this. Is where you can do group, you can do merge, you can clean, you can do describe, you can concatenate, you can sample your data, and so on and so forth. So in this space, we'll be talking to, say, SQL. For those of us that are in SQL, you have heard of things like SQL Analysis Service, AW. That's for Microsoft, and a couple of other things in other spaces, right? And then finally, in this part is the visualize. I'm sure this is probably where most of us here have our skill sets concentrated, where we have dashboard, charts, KPIs, OKRs, visualizations, insights, analytics, and all of this other stuff, right? So I was saying, let me go back. So I was saying that in all of these spaces, Python would play comfortably. For example, there is a tool that we probably may have heard of. It's called Pandas, Python for data analysis, specifically for data analysts. Let me show us that. It's an excellent tool that does both ingestion, extraction. I can throw in just a moment. I'm going to show us a small demo. I think I have just a 1 second. Okay, so I'm going to share my other screen quickly. We are back here. Okay, so if you can see my screen now, I have. So I'll quickly just show us a few seconds. I'll run us through. Let me do search. I think I can do that here. So this is my data set. It's a CSV file. Thankfully, Jupyter Notebooks, which comes with Anaconda. If you install Anaconda, you have access to Jupyter Lab. Allows us to view our data. If it's in CSV, a quick view of how our data looks like. So this is a compilation of titles of Hacker News content that have been published at a particular date. Tells us the author of the post, the URL of the post. I can extend the title of the post, right? Number of comments and the number of points. There's a rating system on Hacker News. If you've used Hacker News, it's a news aggregation platform. So this is the CSV file. I'm using the CSV file, right? Like I said, with ingestion, you can get data from CSV, you can get data from databases, you can get data from virtually anywhere, all right? But just to keep it simple, I'm doing this with CSV. So here I have my Pandas library. I have installed it. Like I said, it comes with Anaconda. So all I need to do was, on this line, I import it as PD. Then I import, remember when I mentioned regular expression? This is a regular expression library, right? And then the next line here, what I did is, I did the ingestion part. I go and I get the data using Pandas. I read CSV. So allow me to split this so that I just keep it simple. So first, I run this. Like I said, I'm not here to teach us how this works. So I store this. If I run HN, to see just something similar. If you look, if I look at this closely and I look at it with the file itself, I see that they are similar. So technically, I've been able to ingest the data with Python, right, into my notebook. And when I'm done, I can say, okay, if I want to see only the titles, let me split this as well. I can run that and call it titles. So with this, I'm able to view only the titles. So technically, I can perform various kind of, allow me to use the word in-place analytics, right? I can now do things like extraction with as well. I can go here and I can get how many times SQL, the word SQL is contained in each title. Like I said, this is just me showing us how this works. So this is going to return how many times, how many of these, there are 20,000 lines. How many of these contain the word SQL? And it's saying that it's 108. Of course, if you do a visual count, you find out that the word SQL appears 108 times. And of course, a couple of other things that you can do with, this is just me using pandas, by panda and the regular expression library, right? I have that kind of power, and you can see how fast it runs, right? If you compare this with some of the tools we are used to, where we want to extract and do some of this other stuff, you find out that Python is way faster, as in way faster. So let me go back to my presentation. That's just a short demo. It's not to show how it works. To show that it works. And this is on a small scale. It works. So you can do ingestion, extraction, transformation, load, analyze, and visualize. Visualization. Can I do that? Should I? Okay, I'll just show us a quick demo of visualization. On Python this time, it's something I've already run, just so that I think time is against me seriously. I need to start running up. So it is probably taking longer than I expected. So this is a small heat map that shows the correlation. So if you've done statistics, if you have experience with statistics, you understand something called correlation, where you can compare two values and find out their relationship or their correlation. And with Python, for this particular one, I used the mathematical plot library. It's called matplotlib. I think it's somewhere in my here. So with matplotlib, I was able to import my data, and sorry, do not get too scared about the length of some of this stuff. With time, you find out that it's pretty easy to do. I also use something called Seaborn, also for visualization, and I was able to plot. For those of us that are in oil and gas, we probably have an understanding of some of these kinds of plots. But this is for vehicles. Then for I was able to visualize the correlation between the causes of vehicle accident. This is data that I had for this particular one. Right? So that's in the part of analytics. Then we quickly jump straight into one thing that I believe that if you are in the analytics, or if you are in the data or VI space, it becomes critical. It gives us an edge, because I agree with you. Do ingest, do extract, do transform, do load, do analyze, do visualize. But now at the point where we now get to the automating the pipeline, this is the part where you see that it now becomes important for us to understand how Python can do this for us. So from the automate pipeline, so to automate all of these things we've said, right? From the data engineering part to the preparation part, down to the analytics, where we are talking about, if you are in machine learning, you start talking about modeling, about visualization, talking about analysis, and so on and so forth. When we try to automate this pipeline, then we can now go into the scripting part of Python, where we can tell Python to automate some of these things. Since we are Microsoft people, I'm going to show us one last slide. I hope this works. I hope this works for me. Okay. So if we look at this screen, it's not very different from this. Do not make it. Don't be fooled by what you see. I try to simplify this a little more. You see more. It's kind of similar. You get data from your on-premise network. You get external data from different places. You store it somewhere. Using, in this case, you can use Azure Storage or Azure Synapse. You can manage everything using a data factory. You can do authentication with Azure Active Directory. Then you can go into the analysis. Analysis does your with analysis service. You can do all of that. Then do your visualization with Power BI. So at the various parts of this, I can have notebooks that do Python notebooks at each portion of all of this to automate some of these activities, right? Especially when you are now talking about orchestrating all of these activities, automating them to technically give you what I call a business insight organization or a real-time agile organization, where as data is changing from a data source, you are immediately seeing the effects at the visualization part, right? So I think this is where I might just stop. And just to round up, the question will now go into, okay, how do we get business impact? I think that's the last part of that slide, getting business impact. How do we get business impact? Of course, this I'm going to leave to you to decide. That is strictly a business decision that will now depend on various other factors that are beyond just the technical things that we have spoken about, right? This is where data strategy comes in. This is where business analytics comes in. This is where market analytics comes in, and a couple of other stuff. That's now the business impact part of it. So I think that is the end of my gist. We are 3 minutes into 7 p.m. And if you have any questions, ask them. I don't know, Mike, we have space or time for questions. I have no idea, man.
Yes, and I've been monitoring the chat. So far, it's just what you have dropped there. But if you have questions, please ask. So normally too, there are some questions we ask all guests. So I'm going to ask you yours too. So question number 1, your journey. How did these all start? How did these all begin? Was it that right from primary school you had started picking your subjects and you had picked Python? Maybe did it start from maybe even from before the world? So can you tell us?
Began. Okay. I know that this is a question that I have to answer for a couple of times. Yeah, I like to say that I have, of course, I'll say nobody started with Python. We must have all started from, right? Just a second. So I'll say, like most of us, if you are a data person, right? You realize that most of us started from data. I remember writing an article. Okay, let me even go back to before the article. I've always been in IT, did engineering, got out there, got myself a job in support, right? And support is fun, I'll tell you. You have to solve problems every day. And then, of course, as you're solving problems every day, you are generating data. So as part of your support work, you technically have to do reporting. I was kind of lucky. I rose to managing the IT infrastructure. And when you get to that point, you will have to report. And when you need to report, that means you need to begin to analyze things like database logs, right? You need to analyze things like service requests and their frequencies. Then you now start thinking like a reporting person, right? And with that, I now began to develop interest. I started going away from the usual, let's fix the computer, let's get service requests to be solved, to things like how many requests were solved this week, right? Then you start thinking of Excel, you start thinking of databases, and so on and so forth. right? So you see how I went from support to data, and then Excel became a love. Of course, I've been using Excel before I even got into from when I was very young, but at the enterprise level, it became very serious, right? And then we started using Excel for a lot of things. Then it was 2003, I think Excel 2003 to Excel 2010 when we had to install. Remember when we had to install Power Query in a separate bundle just to make Excel 2010 up with Power Query. Yeah, because really at that point I don't know whether I was one of the early adopters of that, but data was too big for Excel. I needed to extend fast. So when we saw Power Query, stuff, let's extend the 1 million rows quickly, right? So Power Query came in, began to play around with Power Query, and of course, it got to a point that even Power Query and the extensibility of Excel, of the inbuilt Excel database was not enough. So SQL now began to come into the matter. It started doing things like data warehousing, integration service. I don't really remember one particular Nigerian Excel users group where we discussed something about doing machine learning with Excel. I don't know, that's many years ago. You still remember that are long enough in Nigerian Excel user group. So that was part of my journey, right? Where I had to start doing predictive analytics in Excel, so that where we begin to connect to SQL databases and analytics service, right? So that's, of course, that went, because of course of the memory limitations that we had, because we are doing this thing in database, needed to now extend programmatically. Of course, automation began to become important. The business needed to be agile. Everything needed to be run real time. Then Python came in. We needed to automate some of these processes. And of course, once you enter into the world of Python, you need to start learning programming, right? So Victor will say, Victor, my friend, those of us that know him very well, will say that I'm Judas Iscariot. I left Excel and went to Python. I'm sorry, Victor. This is a shout out to you. So there's my journey. And of course, when you get to Python, you now begin to see when you get to the world of programmatic data analytics, the world explodes all around you. You can actually automate the boring stuff. You should read that book. It's a book by Al Swigert. Automate the boring stuff. You can automate all of these things that you're used to doing. The data refresh that people are doing, or that you have to pay Power BI to do. You know what I mean? So there are a lot of things that you can really automate to get some of this stuff. And then it's a lot of, I don't know, I hope, and of course we are here now, explaining the same thing to others.
There are some 3 questions. Dr. Francis, your hand was up. So maybe you go first because your hand came up.
Okay, question about dating for you then. Would you?
Why? The person, Dr. Francis is on mute to let the question come.
Hello?
Yes.
Okay, so 2 questions. Yes.
Yes, yeah, the guy that I don't like to ask you questions.
Yeah, sorry now. First question. Yes. So how do you convince somebody in Onitsha market that he needs data for his business? Because over time they have been doing this business and yet they are successful. So how do you convince them that they need data? That's one. Then secondly, with Python in Excel, so you now have this PyExcel. So to what extent now can it replace VBA with the PyExcel? Thank you.
I like the second question, but let's start with the first. Yeah. Are there any similar ones here? Okay, maybe not. Okay, so the first question is, how do we convince the man on the streets, right? The guy that probably didn't even go to school with adopting Python. Well, I wouldn't let me tweak it a bit. Let me know use the word adopting Python. How do we explain the importance of data to somebody that all he knows is Naira and Kobo, right? It's technically like saying, why does somebody in the market need an accountant to help him balance his books? I don't really get it. You see, I'm trying to repaint the picture in a way that we can see it holistically. So if if we see data as important to optimizing our business, so how many more? Let's use accounting, for example. If you do not see your financial statements, if you do not put together a financial statement, you may not know where your cash flow problems will happen. Am I correct? So you may not see the cash flow problem. You may not see your financial position and where you may need to make adjustments to it. So really, I would say it actually starts with understanding the business needs for data. So if I sell 3 shirts today and I sell 7 shirts tomorrow, why exactly did I sell 7 shirts tomorrow? Is it because tomorrow is December 25th? Maybe it's a Christmas season? Or is it because I am now exporting the shirts, they are probably jackets, to some of these cold regions like the US and Canada, where they need jackets? When you begin to put these things in paper, you are beginning to be reporting on them, then data begins to become important. So I think the real focus will be on the importance of data. Python is only a tool, really. Is data important? Once we establish that fact, then we can now begin to extend towards things like Excel, Power BI, Python, Tableau, ClickView, and so on and so forth. I don't know if that explains anything.
I'll just provide Excel in Excel, like already create VBA, create user-defined functions with Python in Excel. I don't know if did you get the second question?
Yeah. I like to avoid questions that compare technologies. I like to avoid it. I'm sure for those of us that know that those kind of thing can very, very easily go into, you've heard of the very popular Power BI is better than Tableau, Python is better than Excel. I'm like, guys, let's not do that, right? So I wouldn't say let's try to compare if VBA will be kicked out by what's they call it, by PyExcel, right? I even like to see Python, for example, not from the part of using it in like PyExcel and all, but using it in the full ecosystem. That's the real enterprise level benefit. I actually use the word enterprise level, right? If you are a startup, a small business startup, trust me, don't bother. Your data is too small. So use your Excel and chill with it and enjoy yourself. If you like big stuff, enter the scope of Power BI, right? And start doing your analytics there. Have fun. But when you now get to the point where you now need to do serious data ingestion, you need to begin to connect to social media analytics, and then you're going to think in the scale that we are talking about at the enterprise level, where the number of data that you're extracting is most likely gigabytes and gigabytes of data, some in text, some in audio. If you think about it, Excel will not do this kind of stuff for you, man. Right? VBA, for example, not this kind of stuff for you. This is the scale that we can now begin to think about the full BI or the full data ecosystem. So different strokes for different folks, and every ingredient in this company. That's it.
Okay, so another question by Damilola. Damilola, are you still on the call? Do you want to ask him directly? Or I should read your question? Okay, maybe I'll just read it then. So his question is, please, can you talk on ML, on how ML can be used in BI? Did you get it?
Okay. Well, I can say a lot of buzzwords already. So the first thing is, what exactly is machine learning? ML is machine learning, right? ML is an application of artificial intelligence, another buzzword, artificial intelligence. But the simplest way to explain ML would be to design a system that can learn from experience without programming. Everything I have seen it do so far has been writing step by step. So, example, if you want to cook a meal, I need to tell myself, put water first, after adding water, okay, I want to make a bath. For those of us that are in Nigeria, I need to first put on the stove, right? Put in a kettle or a pot, depending on you. Throw in water, let it boil. You know, there is a series of steps that must be followed in a particular order. That is the usual programming, right? Of course, you can add some conditions, like if power holding, or depending on your power utility company, gives you light, do not use gas, but use electric power. Those are now conditional statements and all, right? That's for the usual functional program. When you now get to the point where you can design a system that can learn how to make cheese without necessarily being taught, without being programmed to do it. That's the point of machine learning. Now, in the part of business intelligence, where machine learning now comes in, is where you can, allow me to use the word, you can data, and let me use a small example. You want to classify data. You have some people, you have collected data from a large market. Let's say you got it from social media, right? You got this guy's profile, you got this guy's profile, you picked up his post, and you're interested. I want to sell a product to some specific people. If you are selling to Nigerians, you can just say filter by country, right? If country is Nigeria, go ahead and do that. But now when you get to the point and say, okay, will this guy like cheese? Now, at that point, you are beginning to think intuitively. Let me use that word. So will he like cheese? Will he like, let's say you want to sell butter, or you want to sell, butter. Butter is used to make. So you want to sell butter. Will he like cheese? You probably know, okay, if he likes cheese, he would probably like butter. So all you have to do is you now write a model that checks based on the posts that people have made on whether they will like cheese. And then you can now send them butter. So you see, that's where ML can now be used with business intelligence to now do analytics or prediction, and there are, of course, now there are different types of analytics. There's descriptive, there's diagnostic, there's predictive, right? And so on and so forth. I think there are 4 of them. I think I've skipped one. So in the area of data, machine learning can play a part in all of that. I hope that there has been some explanation of some sort.
So another question, CK, are you still on the call? Do you want to ask him directly?
Yeah, okay, yeah, thank you, sir. I think, yeah, fine. So I just want to know, I've followed today's session on Python, very detailed session. Thank you so much, sir. And so I know there is a Python, and which other one, R plus, what have you, on Power BI. So I want to know, how does this work, the Python icon in Power BI, compared to maybe the standalone that you have explained here so far?
So I would like to play, Power BI itself is the analytics tool, is the visualization tool. Okay, Power Query is the analytics tool. But let's not go into the nitty-gritty of how all of this works. Also, the Power BI ecosystem allows you to do analytics and visualization of data, right, including extraction and all. Now, for like I explained with PyExcel versus VBA and some other stuff, you see that the add-ons that we add to some of these other tools that's what they are, add-ons. They do specific things, right, that now allow your external tool, which is technically in this case, Power BI, to now work on the data that they have extracted. So you see that, for example, there's Power BI visualization on Python visualization on Power BI that allows you to use some of those libraries in Python, visualize it, and then Power BI does the display of all of those things, right? Or depending on how you want to do that, how you want to play around in that space. So, like I said, it is mostly there as an add-on. It is not the whole box. So when you get to the point where you need to now do, like I showed with notebooks, where you now have dedicated, let me throw in an example. When you get to the point of orchestration and automation, this point, for example, simple. You see that the Python 2 in Power BI may not necessarily do all of this for you. Right? You may not be able to have access to things like data security, right? You may not have access to things like monitoring in that pipeline. So if the interest really is simply visualization or analytics, that, really, you don't have a problem. You can go ahead and use the visualization part. If you look at what's there is the Python visualization for Power BI. You can use that and you're good. But when you get to the realm of, say, you're trying to do the full scale ecosystem, you are doing enterprise data analytics or enterprise data intelligence or the whole data strategy, then you now need to look beyond using add-ins to using the tools themselves, right? I hope that explains anything.
Okay.
Sure, sir. Yeah, thank you.
I think I've read out all the questions that have come up here. There's just, I said there are two things. So you've answered one, your journey. So the other one is, well, it's like a A and a B component. So the A component is, if you look at your career, if you look at you, I know you've said in the big picture, but then just tell us, your journey into this space. If you look back 10, 15, as many years back as you want to go, what is the one thing that has happened to you that kind of defined where you are now? That defining, the thing that if you remember, the remembrance comes to you on an emotional level, like nothing comes close. It could be a good thing. It could be at that point it was a good thing or a bad thing, but something that kind of shook you to the core and set the direction of where you are now.
Okay, allow me to use the word the defining moments of our data. Is my network still good? I can see that.
Yeah.
Okay. So I was saying right that allow me to use the word the defining moments of my data journey. For me personally, of course, I've started using data. For example, if you're an Excel person, you should have started working with data already in sales and that. And if you are from the technology space, it's easy for you to transit from tech to data. For me, the biggest deciding moment has been when I got to a point in my life when reporting became too manual. I hate manual stuff. I absolutely hate manual stuff. So when I got to that point where I had to be at my desk on a weekend, I don't know whether this happens to accountants. There are accountants on this call. Some people will go to their office on the weekend just to close the books. I used to go to the office on the weekend just to go and do log extraction and then do log analysis and then do log reporting, right? So I'll be seeing my accountants on one side trying to close their books for the month. Then I'm doing the same thing on my own side because I'm trying to do the similar kind of reporting. And really, it made me angry. I would try to automate it as much as possible, but then scale now became a problem. I think for some of us too, scale also was a deciding factor when it comes to data. When you get to that point where the data you are handling your system can handle it, but it's too slow. So I need distributed processing. I'm handling data that is gigabytes in size, and my computer cannot just handle it. So I need to use things like Spark or Hadoop or I don't know, those kinds of distributed database systems to make it work, right? So to me, I would say that personally, those were the defining moments, actually in my switch. Let me know the word switch in my playing around the space from technology, which is operational technology, to data part of technology. That's me.
Okay. Okay, so that's really cool. So the last part that we round up with is, so I know you do so many things on the side. You know, your interests are really very broad. So unfortunately, we do not have money to give you. No, really, nothing to say. Take thanks for coming and celebrate Christmas with, but at least we can help you with putting the word out. So, what are the things you do that people we can be your customers or that you want us to be aware of? You know, is it that maybe there's a business you run on the side, or is it that there's some volunteer stuff you do that you want us to be aware of? Or, you know, I see already. Please, everybody, you can see the social media link. Connect with him. But then again, more than that, we want you to be able to, not just to those of us here, the people who are also going to watch the recording, you know, they will be happy if there's something that they can patronize you for. You know, this is our way of saying thank you for your time and your knowledge share.
Okay, so thank you very much for that. Okay, I think I've changed this. So I'll say, well, what I do is I do mostly, you probably see it in my bio. What I do mostly is, where's my screen? How do I go there? Oh, sorry, I think it's somewhere. So there's a community I have on Telegram, Python data community. It's still very small compared to the goals that we have in the future. I'm just about a few thousand members where you can ask your questions about how to implement. It's on Telegram. You can just search. Oh, I didn't share a link. Let me just share that link quickly. Just a moment. I hope I have enough time to do this. So, okay, let me just continue my gist. So sorry. So I run this community called Python Data Community. Let me just share the link with you.
I'm going to type it for you. You know, I'm a member.
Okay. Yes, you are. Excellent. So you can just go there and, yeah. So you can go there, pay, visit. Thank you very much for typing that. Then also I do trainings. I think I typed this already. Do trainings on Python, on Excel, and on SQL. I have a course on Udemy that should explain the introduction. That's if you are a business analyst, if you are a business analyst, you are a data strategist like me, you are, let me see if I have it, SQL or business analyst, just a minute. That course on Udemy, you can just go there, help yourself with how, okay, I found it, how SQL works. I think it's $19.99, very cheap, really. Just a few hours of video. And of course, some of these things I've explained, you probably learn how to use SQL for this kind of, I think I have, let's see, I'm going to share, I'll send a link as well on the chat. I'll also share my screen. So you can go here. I can share my screen too, probably see it. Okay, someone trying to ask a question? So you can also look out, it's 1999. You can also look out for there's a couple of coupons that I also put out once in a while that you can use to get this course, right? This is just a basic understanding of how database management works on SQL using Python, right? So that is one as well. The other thing I do is that I also do some form of business advisory. So if you are interested in, I like to say I teach businesses how to leverage technology for business productivity. If you look at what I've just explained, I play in the full ecosystem of data, from ingestion to extraction to transformation to loading. And like I said, I'm a multi-cloud specialist as well. So whether you're working in the cloud space, this kind of stuff is because we have to know how to know how to advise everybody when it comes to using data for their specific needs. So I think that will be it. You can look out for me on LinkedIn. You can look out for me on Facebook. Of course, you won't get tech stuff on Facebook about troublemaking on my Facebook, or you can look out for me on Twitter. Right. So there we have it.
Thank you very much. Mr. Dapo has a question for you. Maybe that will be the question that wraps it all up from there. So, Mr. D, yes.
Okay.
Yes, thank you. Good evening, and thank you for that wonderful presentation. I joined the data science outreach sometimes back in Abeokuta. You know, they were trying to reach out to many people to join them and, you know, teach them programming and all sorts. But after downloading and installing Python and Jupyter on my system, I had to run. I had to run away, seriously. Run away in the sense that, you know, these things were just new to me, you know, coming from Excel, SQL background, right? You know, having to call all these new codes, all these new codes were just very new to me, and I just had to run. Now, my question is this: is there any soft landing way of learning Python, right? Or is just a pill I just have to swallow? Do you get my question?
I like these kinds of questions. Okay, when it comes to learning Python, right, I would say that if you are from an Excel background, the folks that would find it easiest to learn Python will be folks that have some form of, at least they have looked under the hood of Excel. If you understand what I mean by under the hood of Excel, they have at least taken a peek at it, right? You find out that it's easier for you to pick up Python and use. That's one. Then two, if you are not from an Excel background at all, programmers, of course, would have the biggest advantage learning Python. And number three, for those that, the other people that will have an advantage as well will be those that, I mean to use the word, have the right form of guidance. Guidance in the sense that I would advise anybody always start with notebooks. Do not go and take a deep dive into Python and start doing command line. You will run. Unless you just tell yourself that I have to die on this thing. But if you're the type of person that you're just trying to let me just test this and let me see how it works. The first thing I teach anybody is let's go to notebooks, right? Let's do something with, especially if I'm from an Excel background, let's do something with the Excel that we are used to, right? So you cannot rule out the place of guidance, and allow me to go psychological mentorship when it comes to really mastering the art of Python. Of course, there are a lot of YouTube videos out there. There are a lot of them. So even if someone that can even put you through which ones you should even go to, because really you can just pick up a random one and you find out that what they start with is probably the Notepad++, and then you start seeing code here and there. You cannot run away from code. But truth is, like you said, everyone would need a soft landing. Let us not joke about it. If you are in the field where you start to use Python, you will use command line. You can't run away from that. Unless now you want to start using tools like Alteryx, which are still like, they are no different from Power BI, right? They are at the visualization level. When you start going to the part where you need to start automating the data pipeline, then you will need to, whether you like it or not, begin to see some lines of code. So I'll tell people, some people have an advantage. We cannot rule that out. But at the same time, so that you can surpass that advantage, of course, that's why there are trainings that are available. That's why I personally, I take people for personalized trainings. I'm not sure I mentioned that. You don't do personalized training, for example. I think that's, personally, I believe is the easiest way to learn the language, where you can interact. But you know, the thing about personalized trainings, they don't come cheap, right? You can decide that, okay, you can go for the ones that are available on the internet, pick a YouTube video, pay for a Udemy course, or you can say, okay, you know what, Kelechi, let's sit down, let's do 2 hours per day, or let's do an hour per day, and let us walk through this. The good thing about personalized trainings is that is tailored to your personal history. So if you're an accountant, I can tailor a training to fit your scope of understanding. That's where mentorship is very important as well. There, you have it.
Okay, so thank you, everybody. I think at this juncture, we have to wind. It's been a long day. So thank you for staying this long. And Merry Christmas once again. Thanks for joining the last session for the year. See you next year and to a glorious 2021. So bye.
Yep.
Bye.